Okay, here we go.
Bye.
All right, I'll just get started.
Go.
Jeff.
Yeah. Well, good day.
Good day.
Nice to see you.
Good day.
Today.
Nice to see you all.
So is everyone who's waiting in, Jay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, welcome. I will call to order the May 18th, 2021 business retention. My internet is unstable, so I may need to call in, but we'll give it a try. Normally, Mayor Holstage is the other member of this, but given Councilmember Woods and I have been working on Parklets and he's been the lead on that, he will be on for the first agenda item. And for folks who haven't been on these before, we'll do staff presentations on each item and then we'll take public comment on each item separately so people have the benefit of that information. So the first item is a discussion of Parklets moving forward. And just brief before I turn over to staff, is moving through the legislature. So far, it has had bipartisan support. It's passed. It would allow Parklets to remain 365 days after the emergency order, not the tiers, but the full emergency order is lifted. Expected to be and Brazil so far has unanimous bipartisan support for the cities and should hit the Senate floor sometime in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Seeing is count. What's back on my phone. So with that, can I ask for a staff report, please?
Sure. If we could have everybody also mute their microphones, please, be appreciated. Let me go on and just share my screen. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So what happened with several cities is a response to the COVID restrictions where they began allowing services on public sidewalks, street right-of-ways, and private property. And parklets specifically are those areas within curbside parking spaces that can be allowed for businesses to use public space. An example of parklets is shown here from different cities. You can see a lot of similarities, some nuanced differences in their design. And just some examples, we sent out some information and pulled some of the eligibility and ineligibility criteria used by different cities. In San Francisco, the parklets are to be open for any member of the public to use. In Pasadena, they allow dining and retail uses or general public uses. San Francisco also has a shared spaces program, which allows for display of merchandise or dining. West Hollywood, interestingly enough, does not allow for table service or merchandise and must remain open for use by the public. Santa Barbara allows food service or personal care business, in the parklets.
Hey, Jay.
Yeah.
Jay, sorry, this is Justin. Can you just keep an eye on the waiting room? I think Councilmember Kors may have been bumped and
Okay.
Councilmember Woods may have been bumped and may try to rejoin.
Thanks, Justin. I can't minimize my, oh, here we go. Wow, it's all our councilmen. I'm readmitting them in. I hope we have people here. Thank you, and please let me know because it looks like the presentation defaults to full screen on my computer.
If you want, Jay, you can make me co-host and I'll do the letting in the door for you for this, and then you can take it away when you're done.
David, are you volunteering to be that co-host?
I am.
Let me see if I can see that. Seeing the option for that.
Go to
Why don't we
Park.
just go on and have you let me know when you see people that need to be added.
What's that sound?
A meeting.
And if we could have everybody mute their microphone, please. Thank you. All right, so as we were saying, the last item here, Santa Barbara does allow for food service or personal care services in the parklets. So if we talk about design, as I said, there's a lot of similarities and there are some nuanced differences. In San Francisco, they specifically called out keeping the visibility. They had specific dimensions and safety standards, as most cities have for the parklets. And no part of the structure can be over 10 feet high. And I found that to be true of most of the other parklet criteria. That might actually be a state requirement. And here are some examples that came from the San Francisco brochure. These appear to be just seating areas. In Santa Barbara, in terms of design, they request that the businesses conform to certain aesthetic guidelines. They have approved materials and colors, and they also have prohibited elements as part of their parklet program. So as you can see, the color palettes here are Santa Barbara, what Santa Barbara limits the colors to. And just another example of some of the Santa Barbara information from the Santa Barbara brochure. The prohibited items in Santa Barbara include the fake grass, the fencing, the lattice fencing, and the wood fencing on the right-hand side. So they do prohibit that. In Sonoma, they emphasize exterior perimeter treatments. As you can see, there's these planters and barrels that are used. They encourage general amenities, so things that the public might benefit from. And in West Hollywood, as I mentioned, they encourage a more provocative and creative types of projects. They like to incorporate seating elements and durable, locally sourced and sustainable materials, integration of landscaping, and really responding to the unique character of the site where the park was proposed. And along the lines of creating a community space. They hope to transcend boundaries of gender, age, race, income, and physical ability. Here's some samples that were in the West Hollywood brochure. I don't know if these are actually in the city of West Hollywood, but they were used as examples in the information that West Hollywood puts out to prospective parklet constructors.
You may want to check the waiting room again, Jay, because you didn't make me a co-host, so I can't see who's in there, but I'm sure there's people waiting.
Thank you. Not seeing anyone right now, but
Okay, thanks.
yeah. And here's another example from the West Hollywood brochure as to the types of parklet projects that they would want to see. And I believe this is the last example, Pasadena would, as you can see, requires quality furniture and fixtures and furnishings to create uniform style and character, and barriers to provide safe and attractive ways to protect people from vehicles. Here's examples from the Pasadena informational brochure that they provide. There's just a handful of slides left that touch on Americans with Disabilities Act, which is required of just about all parklet setups. Public noticing requirements are different in some of the different cities. As you can see, San Francisco requires notice to abutting property owners. And if there are objections, it will require a public hearing. If there are no objections, the parklet can be approved administratively by staff. West Hollywood requires 3 letters of support. Pasadena requires approval from 2/3 of the businesses or properties along the block frontage. And Sacramento requires notification of property owners and businesses. Adjacent businesses. Couple other considerations would be how to treat overhead wires. And in some communities, they've kind of wrestled with the use of outdoor televisions. So that may be something else that comes in as a request. And the rest are just images from different communities of different parklets that have been done. Some have art elements involved. Some are functional, such as the bike rack, or have games. And that would do it. Council Member Coors, I believe this, and Woods, I believe this is where we would have some discussion.
Sure. And thank you for that report. And just for background, I think a lot of these are cities that, have looked at parklets pre-COVID, because that's sort of where we have guidelines that exist, as opposed to where we are. And for the most part, those are open to anyone in the public to use. They're not controlled. You couldn't serve liquor at those. But really good to see the kind of guidelines that, people put in place so they look good moving forward. Just to frame the discussion a little today is we are bringing a discussion for council that if the state allows it and SB 314 passes and becomes law, what kind of guidelines would we look for parklets for that next year period that it's allowed? What And some of the issues just that have been raised to me that I just want to share, because I think getting public comment on these would be helpful, is how should it be divided up, right? Some places have a lot more space than others. Should we allow blockage of traffic as we do for part of Palm Canyon and part of Arenas, or should it just be parking spaces and sidewalks, or just sidewalks? What should they look like? What kind of guidelines should they look like? How often the restaurant, for example, needs to be open and what it looks like when they're not operating. So just those are some of the issues that I've heard. Just want to let Councilmember Woods, who probably worked on this more than anyone on council, share any thoughts to help, foster the kind of input that'll be helpful for us prior to this coming to council at the first meeting in June, which is when it's currently scheduled. Dennis, you're on mute.
Here we go. Hello, everybody. My apologies. My internet went out because of the wind, so I am on a cell phone. So hopefully you can hear me okay. Just a little history on Parklets. Parklets started out kind of for the center of new urbanism as a way to use public right-of-way more effectively. And they were really meant to be places people could sit and be a park. You could sit and you could, have a little lunch from any variety of restaurants that are adjacent to it. During COVID, they've evolved to basically being private enterprises in the public right-of-way, used by restaurants and bars and other institutions. So I think we're at the stage today of we've tried them out during COVID, and they seem to be effective as a temporary measure to keep these businesses alive and well. And I think that people like them. So I think what we need to discuss today is, when we frame it for the city council, is what is equitable? What does equitability mean as we address it? We have to address the issue of safety, address the issue of aesthetics, and address the issue of parking. If we're going to keep these for another year. I mean, we've almost had a year under our belt with some experience. And I think our experience thus far has been positive, and we want it to remain positive, but we're really here to listen to your input about what you think of the Parklets and your experiences with them.
So with that, Jay, why don't we open it up for public comment? We don't time limit on this because it's usually a small group, but please try not to go too much over 2-3 minutes so everyone has a chance to speak, and we have 2 other items on the agenda, but we can have a little more back and forth than we normally would at a council meeting.
So I would just have one question for Jay Barada. Jay, did you find in any of those regulations what they're supposed to do when they're not open? Like they have to leave the tables out, or is that in any regulation anywhere?
I think it had to do more with the merchandise, where they were required to remove everything every night from the area. Now, some of the parklets we saw in the examples are more permanent fixtures, so those would obviously stay in place.
And Bruce, just to answer that a little bit further, as I said, I don't think the parklets were originally meant to be for private enterprise, so they were built as parks to always be open. They've changed now, and that's a really good question. Should we if we're going to use them for private enterprise, do we want to have a minimum number of hours or time frame that you need to be open and they're used, and then what do you do when they're closed, like what we're currently doing? And I think that is a big question to answer. I think is a great question.
I had a quick question. This is Michael Braun. David, you said it's Dennis. You said it's only for 12 months. Is there any discussion to potentially extend that much more, like forever, or for at least 36 months, to justify the investment that either the landlord or the tenants will need to make to make them visually much more prettier? What I'm really concerned about are the shade structures that have been erected, which basically give the parklets not a very visual, pleasant look.
So, we can discuss any length of time, Michael, as far as that goes. And I hear you about the return on investment that you want to make. And we do want them to be, aesthetically pleasing, and we want them to be safe. We don't want those shade canopies blowing down on top of diners, right? Especially in high wind areas and things of that nature. But we want it to be aesthetically pleasing. A lot of them that we saw in the examples did not have shade structures. We need shade structures here in the desert. So that's going to be probably part of the overall thing, whether they be temporary umbrellas or something more permanent than that. But, a long-term solution to it, if you're looking long-term, is really whether we use the public right-of-way street, or do we just use the sidewalks, or do we just use parking lots? There are competing interests for the street itself. That includes parking. The Sustainability Committee is looking at putting in, more permanent bike lanes. And the question really is from the group here today is, what do they envision the future to be, whether it be a year or longer?
And I'll just add that the legislation would allow, if it's passed, them to remain a year where they're under control of the business, right? For ABC.
Jay, can you see that Jeremy Taylor has his hand up?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. If we could have everyone use the hand signal if you've got it. We'll go in that order, and Jeremy Taylor had his hand up there. Okay, Jeremy?
Yes, how are you guys?
Jeremy?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes,
can you hear me?
Little staticky. All right, Jeremy, we can't hear. You want to type a question into the chat?
Jeremy, we can't hear you. You may want to go back on mute and type your question in the chat. It's not working.
Okay, while he's doing that, does anyone else, I see no other hands up in the list. Anyone else? Patricia? Oh, Patricia, you're on mute.
Apologies. Will this consideration for parklets be extended to all commercial restaurants, bars in Palm Springs, or is this consideration solely for downtown? That is the question that I've received.
Well, we're actually formulating the recommendation. We haven't formulated it yet based on this discussion as part of the input on that. Currently, under the COVID thing, it can be anywhere in Palm Springs that has either a parking lot or a right-of-way that's available to, or a sidewalk that's available to them. So, we can continue along that same route as long as there's space available. I don't see a reason to try and limit that unless people have a different opinion.
A follow-up question. Would that include businesses that perhaps may be on private property, that it's not city property? And would that be extended to them if the private property is agreeable to that extension?
Well, it could very well be. It depends on whether you're taking up parking and if there will be parking impacts into the neighborhoods. And really it's going to be on a case-by-case situation like it currently is. Where is that, is it going to be a late night operation that has noise to its neighbors? Where is it actually located within the property, and what are the parameters we want to be talking, and the environmental impacts that we want to talk about?
Okay, thank you.
Does that help you?
It does, thanks.
Okay, we've got the question from Jeremy. We are a new business, and the dining area that is set up at the restaurant beside us blocks the visibility of our business. So I would think the question has to do with whether or not there will be regulations to prevent parklet designs from blocking the visibility of other businesses. As you saw in the presentation, San Francisco had requirements that you retain the visibility.
And I think we'd want to hear from the people that are on the call here about what they feel about that. You know, it is the city right of way if they're using that versus their own parking lot. And do we want to basically allow people to spill next to them or get permission from their neighbor? You know, how do we want to work that? Currently, we try and get permission from the neighbor. Is that correct, Jay? I think that, or Flynn, I think your Flynn's on the line.
Flynn's on.
May I talk?
We don't necessarily require that they submit letters from the neighbor, but we do require approval of the property owner, and we try to limit them to only the space in front of their own business, so they're not blocking others. In certain cases, we have allowed them to extend when they had approval from the adjacent property owner.
Yes, we've got the list.
Per se.
Thank you. I'm sorry. We've got a list of people who want to speak, and the next on the list is Liz. And Liz, it looks like you're muted, and Jerry, we will get to you on that list also.
Is that me? Might be my daughter's phone.
So this is Liz, and I'm the owner of Tequila Restaurant, and we have 3 different adjacent spaces that have been added as a result of COVID. So the first was the sidewalk space, and then we added the parklet space, and then we added the space behind the legal documents property to the north of us, and that's private property, and it's a private parking space, so it's not actually in a parking lot. So it's kind of a test case to look at those 3 different options where you've got the sidewalk, the actual space in the right of way in the street, and then also a private space next door. We've elected to spend a bunch of money on those. So we've spent upwards of $80,000, not including extra umbrellas and things, but that included paving and putting in decking and putting in metal and all plant walls and all kinds of structures to make them fit our brand, because we didn't want to do this and just be like, we're just going to throw something up. So we elected to fit our brand. Now we're putting in on May 28th misters, because we can't make it on Parklets in Palm Springs without some sort of cooling system. So we're putting in $8,000 worth of misters on May 28th. That's going in. So the way that we've got a group that have been meeting, not just restaurant owners, Jeffrey's on the call here, Jeffrey Bernstein's on the call here, and restaurants, retail, hotels, salons, fitness. Many of us have been meeting together in a roundtable group to try to discuss some of the things that are going on current COVID and post-COVID to hopefully help build some consensus that's broad-based, that's not just restaurants coming out and saying one thing or retail coming out and saying one thing. So we've been trying to meet every other Monday to discuss some of these things. And we feel like this needs to be taken in a 2-step process. We've heard the city say that maybe we could kind of create a new kind of downtown feel with a walkability that has paths up the middle of the street. Maybe there's a long-term street closure plan in the future that's part of a general plan amendment that includes parklets and give this a European feel, because we've had so many people, honestly, like most of our customers prefer to sit in the parklets than to sit even on the existing patio that exists there. Definitely everyone prefers to sit outside, even when it's getting hotter. We're still getting people that want to sit outside. So what our group has been talking about, the roundtable group has been talking about, is doing this on a 2-step process, doing something that's maybe like what you're talking about here, that's a year past the emergency ordinance, and then looking and seeing if there's a long-term viability that would make this an attractive downtown Palm Springs concept. So I think we need to look at those 3 elements, whether it's sidewalk, parklet, and adjacent private property that's not part of parking, And then I think we also need to look at what we need to do for parking, because we think there's wayfinding and other things that can be done to improve the parking situation downtown. We go down in that parking garage under the Hyatt a lot, and it's virtually empty. So there's a lot that can be done there. And then I think we need to look at this as a two-step process, something that can be done on a year or so basis, and then what the standards are for something that's more permanent.
Thank you. Joy, I believe you were next.
Well, I honestly want to say I wish I was part of the group that Liz was talking about, because apparently I have some different opinions from the group that I've been meeting with, and that's a little distressing, only because I'm not aware of these other opinions that were just mentioned there. I guess that really some of the things that I just want to make sure are addressed. We have summer coming up now, and I hear Liz saying that she's putting in the micro mist, which of course, I don't know how anybody will even be able to use the parklets without it. And so I am concerned through the summer, what those would look like if they were not being used, and that it would be a senseless use of parking that would take away parking. And in the summertime, I think that a lot of customers really want to park as close as they can to the businesses. I also have some questions about how you would address ADA access with the parklets, like for example, the way that they are on that south block there. I do see it, there's some issues there. Also, drop off for any of the rideshare companies, or just even somebody that wants to pick up their meal that they've called in. It has been problematic. I'm not opposed to parklets. I just don't really like the way that a lot of them look. And I think that they really don't represent Palm Springs that well. Also, some of the retail merchants that have had complaints about what Jeremy, I'm sorry, I don't know what business he's from. I've never met him before, I don't think, but some retail businesses that are concerned, and even one restaurant that's concerned with the visibility to their restaurant due to parklets. So I think that the basic idea of them is good, but there's a lot of rough edges around it that Palm Springs is better than what it is that we're seeing. And so, on one hand, we're talking about having parking issues, and on the other hand, we're using parking spaces for individual private businesses on public property. So I think that those sort of issues need to be addressed. And I would be interested to know from Liz, which of those areas are best. Maybe she said that because she's doing 3 fully different things over there. I think that that's really interesting. And I would just be wondering about that, and how people feel about sitting in the street to eat with cars going by, and if that's a distraction. I know there's been a lot of discussion on noise issues as well, about cars and motorcycles, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know how that affects the dining experience in parklets. So I think that's what.
Thank you. Kristen.
Hi, thank you. I'm leaning toward what Joy's saying, in a sense that the next 5 months, I can't imagine anybody wanting to eat outside. I don't think these parklets were out during the summer months. And for it to be any kind of cool out there, you would basically have to have a complete tent with misters inside to get any kind of comfortable eating environment. That would also, obstruct the view of other businesses. I love the parklets, but I just don't understand why the restaurants would even want to invest in that for the next 5 months, when the business is slower, and also the parklets will not be used all day. Secondly, a lot of the restaurants' employees are using Palm Canyon as their parking lot. So that's another reason why customers can't park there. You not only have the parklets, but you have the employees of the businesses parking on Palm Canyon. I think 5 out of 7 spaces I have in front of my store are used every single day for the owners and employees. So there's 2 spaces that a customer can come and go to. So parking's a big deal, but if somebody could explain as a restaurant, because they are nice, it's nice to sit outside, why they would want to invest the next 5 months in the heat.
Thank you. Jeffrey.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Jeffrey Bernstein. I own Destination PSP, and I do not own a restaurant. I think the first thing is that I like the parklets in general, and I think we have to decide as a community and as a city what we want Palm Springs to be. And the idea of it being a place that has that European feel or an outdoor feel is already what we do. The parklets seem to enhance that. And it seems to me like it is something that we'd want to have long-term, especially as a safety feel. I have not eaten inside at a restaurant yet, and I would like to keep eating outdoors, and it feels safer to me. I think the issues that have come up, a lot of them were already addressed in the other cities. So we're not the first city to address these issues. The design aesthetics is clearly something that is more universal, and no, somebody should not open a retail store and have 10-foot shades in front of them. They would have to invest in some kind of overhead shade. I think some of the parklets are absolutely beautiful, and some of them are tables on a sidewalk. So we should have the same kind of standards that other place has. I think there is, as a retailer, I can tell you, well, I'm very lucky I don't have a parklet right in front of me, but I do have out sidewalk dining. And it is important to consider what the retailers have, especially those that are adjacent to restaurants, and their visibility, the access to their store is important. As a retailer also, we have not had the opportunity to use the public, to use the parking spaces. And I'm going to raise separately, there's an issue when we do have events like Village Fest or Pride, and I'm now being asked to pay for a space that restaurants have had for free. Which brings me to another point, that if the restaurants are going to do that, that there probably should be some fees to use public spaces, and not as strictly as a revenue generating source for the city, but that could be also used to address certain other issues. The biggest one would be parking. We have spaces out there. Nobody really likes to use the underground parking lot, even though they may see a sign, they usually don't. And they will continue to circle Palm Canyon looking for spaces on the street. We have an issue where there's no parking, there's not strict parking controls. So you can park on Palm Canyon from 5 in the evening to 3 in the afternoon without getting a ticket. So those kind of things can be addressed, and that has to be part of the whole plan. Secondly, I would say that restaurants do have them outdoors. We had them outside, but yes, they do have to activate them on a regular basis so that we don't have empty parklets there. But I do think this is the kind of thing that if we decide from a broader scale, this is what our city, that is good for the city, it's good for the revenue, it's good for our residents and tourists, that then we need to separately just address each of the issues in terms of design, fees, parking, and the retail that is affected. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have Jerry Keller.
A very good meeting so far. Our feeling is that, number one, we like the parklets. They helped us out immensely right in the very beginning. As Jeffrey said, customers love them. As long as it isn't too windy, and we do close them when it gets too windy, because you can't eat outside because your food blows off your plate. So wind is a factor. They have to be built strongly enough to withstand the wind and to have any kind of coverings withstand the wind, which we've done. We're very much in favor of keeping them as permanent as possible. We will be upgrading ours with better flooring and a number of other things when we get the ability to at least have it for a year and hopefully for more. People do eat out there in the summer evenings. And Palm Springs this summer is going to be a very busy town. Weekends are going to be sold out. So it isn't going to be, not to be cute, like a desert, although summers have been much busier in the last 10 years than they ever have been before. But this summer is going to be even busier. And people are going to want to come. And if the evening gets a little bit cool with misters, it'll be very comfortable to eat outside. We're very much in favor of keeping the parklets as they are. We very much appreciate the city allowing us to use arenas and part of Palm Canyon. I'm in full agreement with Palm Springs being more of a European feel of a city. I think that that'll differentiate us even more from the rest of the cities around us and make it even a more important destination for people from all over the country and the world. So we're very much for it. We'll do anything we can to make it as good as we can. When we are closed, we make sure it looks neat and clean and presentable. The idea of a minimum number of hours is interesting, depending on the meals you're selling. But this type of meeting is extremely important because I think Palm Springs as a city going forward should be a European type city and differentiate us from the rest of the cities with maybe the exception of Santa Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Braun, we have next.
Thank you, Jay. I echo the comments what Jerry Keller just said, and also Liz and some others. I was just at an event in LA talking to some potential new tenants, and all I heard from everywhere, no matter who I spoke to when I mentioned that I'm from Palm Springs, everybody talked about how wonderful Palm Springs has transformed to a European feel by activating Palm Canyon with all the parklets. So I think the discussion should be, are these parklets going to be allowed for the next 5 to 10 years or forever? And this way it's transforming Palm Springs as a visitor center, and what the perception is. And are we a car-friendly city, or are we becoming more and more a pedestrian city and a city for e-bikes as a mean of transportation? So I think we should use this opportunity to basically create that European feel where parklets via food and beverages being activated, and that's where people want to be. And let's not forget, 12 months is not enough time, and other destinations are opening up all over the world and in America competing with us again. So we need to look forward to next summer 2022. What do we want to be, and what is our competitive advantage? And as a last comment on the shade structures, as you know, we installed some permanent shade structures along Palm Canyon. We're talking about a major investment that these restaurants need to make. So it only makes sense if it's long-term. Thank you.
Thank you. Mindy Reed, please.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see all your faces on here and names on here. And I'm happy you guys are having this conversation, and thank you. First, I just kind of wanted to answer a couple things that Kristen had mentioned. Some of you probably haven't been in Palm Springs, obviously, as long as I have. And I've had Zinn for 17 years and actually started with no outside dining at all. And my perspective at the time was I had windows on two sides that slid open. And in my head, this gave me the best of both worlds, because when it was nice outside, I could open the windows, and when it wasn't nice outside, I could close the windows. And, you know, I thought that was fabulous. Then I got my other restaurant where I had 50 seats inside and 20 seats outside, and everybody fought to sit outside all year. It didn't matter if it was cold. It didn't matter if it was hot. It didn't matter if it was the middle of the day. The patio seats were always the most popular. So I finally broke down, tore the front of my restaurant out, remodeled it, and put that patio in, and literally gave up more than half of my restaurant to patio dining with no way of enclosing it. So and my numbers doubled. So I can tell you with 100% accuracy, and it not being an opinion, that people will sit and want to sit outside regardless of what the weather is. The Europeans like it. They will sit out there for lunch when it's 110. They don't care. A lot of people come from places where it's colder, and they just seriously don't care. So I have data to back that up. I do think that parking on Palm Canyon needs to be readjusted. I think that free unrestricted parking should only be from 11 a.m. to, I think it should be restricted, I'm sorry, for 3 hours to 3-hour parking from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. This would give people who are drunk at night time to get their cars in the morning before they got a ticket. And it would discourage any employee from being able to park there, of any, whether it's retail, restaurants, or whatever. And 3 hours is probably enough time for people to shop and eat. I know from all of my customers and guests and everybody that I talk to that they really love the way Palm Springs looks now with the parklets. I think some people have obviously done better jobs than others. I've been grateful to have Lulu's to collaborate with, and think that area, our street, looks really nice. And think that there should be some standards of how it is expected to look. But I also think that I love the sustainability feeling that it's creating downtown, of a more friendly, walk friendly, bike friendly European feel. So that's just my opinion. And thank you very much for having this discussion.
Thank you. Liz, again, please.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief, but I really believe that this is an international city, that Palm Springs has been, a destination spot for Europeans, largely because of modernism and the other things that Palm Springs has done to really make us special. So I think we're poised to really take advantage of that. And answering some of the questions about the heat of the summer and why would we invest in all of this, we wouldn't invest in this if it didn't make sense. So obviously we're business owners, we're wise to what's going on, and our numbers have been very, very good since we've been able to be reopened. So I thought that May was going to go down. May is not going down, it's going up. And I believe that the entire summer is going to go up. And so I think that we need to invest in those covers. We need to invest in the misting systems. We need to be prepared for a big summer in Palm Springs, because I really think it's coming. And I don't think that's going to end here. And I think we need to make a good splash and a good presentation, because the people that are coming here and that are talking to everybody, they're going to be repeat customers to Palm Springs. So I think we need to be wise in how we present this, and in how our restaurants and retail and our city does in terms of making Palm Springs special when people come in, because I think they're going to come back. I think if we blow it, they're not going to come back. So I think that we need to invest in these parklets, and we need to be ready for the influx of tourists that are coming. We're running a wait list. I can tell you personally at Tequila right now, like I just looked right now, I popped off for a second. We're running a wait list right now on a Tuesday night. And that's happening most of the time. And so we need to keep these spaces in order to keep things vibrant and so forth. And people are wanting to sit there, and they are preferring to sit outside. They're preferring to sit in the parklets. And honestly, we get people that say, I want to sit out on the street in the booths, you know, instead of sitting back in the patio that's, you know, that's undercover. And then they like what we call clandestino in the backside. So they're actually requesting some of these spaces. So I think that we're getting people, like Jeffrey said, that are still wanting to sit outside, and then they're making specific requests for those areas. So, you know, while we have a lot of people in town that may say, oh, I'm never going to sit in the street and eat, that's not what most of the people that are coming in town are saying. So we're hearing a lot of different things. And I think some of our hotel people that are in our roundtable group are saying the same thing, that everybody's commenting that they love the new vibe of Palm Springs.
Thank you. Next up is Lee Marcus. Lee, I believe you're still muted.
That better?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry. I don't have a 14-year-old at my side to train me on this modern technology. My take might be a little bit different than some, although I echo many of the same sentiments as many others on this call, both from the restaurant community and outside of it. I remind us all that we're one community. We're not a series of separate communities. We're one community. If I go back to the original discussions in August, I do believe we need a better, more well-thought, cohesive plan that is inclusive for everybody, not just restaurants only, although restaurants tend to drive more traffic than other traditional retail businesses. That should be acknowledged, but I was disappointed that we left the retailers out of this conversation when it was started in August prior to Labor Day. I do believe we rushed into it. I think we're still paying the price. I would like to see really stringent and tight design standards if we're going to do this on a more permanent basis. And I think we should do it. Don't forget, there's other destinations that are competing with Palm Springs too. We need to be better, sharper. The guest experience, the visitor experience, the local experience has to be crafted in a way that it is ideal for our markets and better than the competition. Okay? And throwing stuff together so that some look great and some don't, probably not the answer. I don't like the fact that Palm Canyon Drive is open. I don't like the fact that the traffic is consolidated down to 2 lanes, and it's creating more noise, more congestion, whether it's the motorcycles, the booze buggies, the golf carts, the kids on rollerblades and skateboards on the sidewalks. It's creating a different environment on Palm Canyon that is louder, more intrusive, and frankly, more obnoxious than any other time in my 23-year history on Palm Canyon Drive. I believe that the parklets have caused some of that, and I support the parklets. I ultimately believe that Palm Canyon Drive should be closed. It should be landscaped, hardscaped, beautiful. Every intersection should have focal points. It should be 100% car-free from the convention center to the museum. Like many, many great international travel destinations are that are car-free. I remember when I was a kid in Vail and also in Snowmass, and they went ballistic when they said we're going to go car-free in those communities. Guess what? If you wanted to put a motorcycle in the middle of any intersection now, they would go to war to stop it. So I sit here today thinking that the right thing to do is make this entire downtown convention center, the museum, north to south, 100% pedestrian, and solve it in an organic way with traffic and parking and all the other things that are going to be needed, and really transform this city into something that's far more than it is now. That's what I believe. And I thank you all.
Thank you. And Dean.
Hey guys, thank you for having this the Zoom and to get some information here. To echo a lot of what's come up in here, I think the biggest problem or challenge that are faced right now for the city is the immediate future and the future. And I think that the hard part for restaurant owners is what's going to happen in a month. Are we going to get shut down for parklets? How do we manage that? How do we plan for that? Is it going to be something that's going to last through the summer? Is it going to be last for 6 months? And then there's the overall question that the city is trying to grapple with is are parklets here to stay? You know, on arenas, we have challenges because we, you know, about 50-50, you know, bars and restaurants to retail establishments. The only way I think the city gets through this is by really working, to echo what Lee said, you know, with everybody in terms of retail and restaurants. You know, parking is a major issue. The city needs to actually look at how to handle parking besides parklets, whether it's marking everything, you know, certain areas being 20 minutes for retail, certain areas being 1 hour, you know, directional signage to where it's going, to where people can park. These are the big challenges that are going to face everybody. If you look at the city right now, Arenas has this little issue with us being closed from Palm Canyon for our neighbors to have parklets. I think there's a way we can reopen that part and still allow them to have their parklets. It would be, you know, super helpful to have access for that. I know some of my neighbors were kind of frustrated that we don't have that traffic coming from there. That being said, there's that pent up demand. What we've seen, and I've talked to my retail neighbors, they've agreed that as the numbers have gone up for the food and beverage businesses, their numbers have gone up. If you have a city over the next year that's going to see a lot of people looking to go to places where they can go out to drink and dinner, it's going to create more traffic for retail. I think the city needs to look at how to balance those needs of the retail and the restaurants in order to get it to move forward. If you don't address both, it's going to fail. And most importantly, and I'm kind of scattered on this here, guys, because there's been too much information, but I would say we need answers first as to what's going to happen in June. And then we need answers to what's going to happen in the long term. Those of us who have parklets are sitting there going, do I spend $8,000 on misters? Do I do this to satisfy my customers who are asking for it? Or is this all going to get wiped away right away? So I've had conversations with some of the city leaders who've told me that it's a possibility that they will be here through September, but we don't have those answers from the state. So we need that help from the city to get those answers. Anyway, hopefully this makes any sense. If anybody wants to talk to me about this, I could probably do a better job one-on-one than I can in this forum. Thanks.
Thank you, Dean. And looks like we have Mindy.
Oh, I just wanted to echo also, you know, I've been mentioning it in Main Street meetings and in emails to city council about retail. And I agree 100%. Retail should be able to have visibility. The store next to me puts, you know, a rack out that looks really nice. They're constantly monitoring it. They have, you know, stuff outside. And I think that there should be the opportunity for them to display their stuff just like they can on North Palm Springs. And they should be given more freedom to express that downtown. So I forgot to say that earlier. Thanks.
And that's all the.
David Feldman's the last one, Jay.
Oh, thank you, David. David Feldman, please.
Yeah, the garage under the Hyatt was mentioned a couple of times. Do we have data on that, on the degree to which that facility is not used and how many parking spaces that could potentially, or, be incremental use of that facility would give us benefit that, that could really change the dynamics of the ability to make that more of a walking pedestrian area and still use the parking. The fact that the spaces are there doesn't mean much if they're not used. It's my impression they're not, but I don't spend a lot of time down there either.
May I say something about that underground garage? It's almost impossible to find a way to get into it from Palm Canyon Drive. You have to drive right in front of the Hyatt and kind of squeeze in. If that garage had a better access or much more signage to allow people to get in to use it, it would be used a lot more. It's a big, wide garage with plenty of parking. Lighting is fairly good. So it could be made more attractive, safer, but I think if it had better access and more signage, it would be used a lot more. It's almost impossible to find the entrance to that if you don't know where it is.
How many spaces are in that garage?
I think it's about 1,100 spaces.
How does that compare to the garage on Barristo quantity?
The other garage, I believe is more in the, about half as much.
So it's a huge amount of capacity.
I know we're drifting here a bit, but I would love to add that I just drove that after last week's GM breakfast down Palm Canyon. And there's just these little tiny signs that warn you a block ahead, free parking. I mean, there's nothing that says free underground parking. I think it needs to be like 2 or 3 blocks farther, free underground parking, verge to the right. And I'll be quiet and thank you.
I'll just answer some of those questions if it's helpful, David Feldman and Bruce and Jerry. And for everybody, the city has been working on a much more robust signage program to get to that underground parking. That will come forward. It has not come forward to city council and or to you at this point because numbers haven't been put to this. The signage is very robust and it's very, it's really good wayfinding because it's about painting the entrances and the whole works. So we're trying to put some numbers on what that would mean and maybe where that money might even come from. So something is already in the works. It's the points are very well taken. And just to let you know, we're working on it. Nothing goes quick.
Thank you, Dennis. Please just make sure you add the word underground because
okay,
that's an enticement, not free parking, underground.
All right, I believe that's it for the public comments. I don't know if any of our council members want to, oh, hold on. Lee, did I miss you? You have another comment? Looks like you're still muted.
Lee, you're muted. I can't yell as far as Kaiser Grill. Yell.
David, you can.
I said sometimes we all have a tendency or may have a tendency, some of us, to do what's quick, what's easy, what's affordable, what's expedient. And the flag I would like to plant on the mountain is this is too important to do that. Whatever we do, however we solve as a community, it has to be done right and to a very, very high standards. This is Palm Springs, and we've got to stand for the very best of it, not what's quick and easy or quick and dirty as sometimes occurs. So I won't support it unless it's done to a very high standard. I can't.
Very good. Jeffrey has another comment, I believe.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate something with the underground parking. It's a lot more than just wayfinding signage that is needed, and we keep adding to it, but I think it has to be branded and promoted as an attraction to the city. People don't, just because there's underground parking sounds not safe, first of all. although it's cooler, and people have no idea how many spaces there are or how close it is or how they'll get out of it. There's a big safety issue with the parking lot, where I know a lot of people don't feel comfortable. There's an issue with employee parking down there. So I think when we talk about wayfinding, you need really a branding agency to create the parking for the city and promote it properly. We have a lot of visitors and tourists, and they're not actually always looking at signage. We've already seen that with the Hyatt. Once you pass it, you have to figure out how exactly you get back to it. So I would hope that when we look at how we promote the parking that's in the city, that we look at really it as a branding exercise, and not just a wayfinding exercise. Thank you.
Okay, Dean.
One quick thing, and maybe you guys want to look at this one, but I know in our parking lots, 50% of the parking is taken up by employee parking, whether it's our own employees or people who work on Palm Canyon. Maybe if there was a way the city can find employee parking and to move all the employees out of all of the other parking, then you can leave that parking open for customers. So, you know, other cities, other shopping malls, you know, have shuttle buses for parking for employees and things like that. If you were to put employees in the underground parking, would you open up a lot of parking for customers? Just a thought, maybe get the bulk of the people you can control to park where you can need them. That's all.
Okay, and Jerry.
Yeah, just one quick comment for Lee. Lee, you're right. We do need a long-term solution or long-term thinking. We do need short-term also. We see how long it takes to get parking sites done through the city. Dennis, I know you're trying, and it'll happen. So I think you need to have a dual path we're working on. A path for the next year and a path for the next 5 years. I know the city has a plan for the next 5 years they've worked on, but I think it now has to be further modified and refined. Thank you.
Thank you. Willie, did you have a question? Was your hand up? Okay. Michael Braun then.
I just want to clarify something on the parking. The city has a program where employees can park in the back that's towards Museum Way, where people don't tend to park. So all they have to get is a pass at the city and they can park there for free all day long. That it probably needs to be promoted more. What Palm Desert is doing is they require all the retailers or restaurants to register the license plates of their employees, and they're prohibited to park along El Paseo, and they need to park in the public parking garage behind the gardens. So maybe we should look at something like this as well. As to the signage, I know that the city has worked with Jim Cross, and they have developed a fantastic sign program, what I've seen on the pictures. And I think and we should ask Marcus Fuller, I think that's in the works already. So I believe the city is ahead of the game. What I want to add to that, what obviously would help the underground parking garage to make it more fun, more colorful, and not just the gray looking danger zone. I think if we put something what I saw here in Orange County or in LA in underground parking garages, they have fun murals, they have pictures like use sunblock, SPF 50, things like this, but in a fun way. Then people are much more motivated to go in the underground parking garage. And we have to see when the event park is open in downtown, I think people by themselves will find that the parking is back there.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Council members, I believe that's it for the comments.
Great, thank you, Jay. Hopefully people can hear me. And hopefully we'll get better internet in the north side of Palm Springs. So we're sort of done with public comment. Just sort of want to share, and Dennis, you know, please let's talk a little bit. There's a lot of information. Really appreciate everyone who participated, who weighed in, who shared their views. This is going to come to council for a discussion and probably direction at our first meeting in June. And I think the way I've been looking at it is sort of this in two parts, right? One is the next year, assuming the state does pass the bill, as is expected from my conversations with Senator Weiner. He thinks there's very little chance that the state's going to stop it before the bill can get voted on and go into effect, which is probably sometime this summer or September. It's an urgency bill, so it needs 2/3 votes. And then it doesn't have to wait till next year, like most bills, to go into effect. I think, we acted quickly to do these to save restaurants, many of whom would not have survived without Parklets due to COVID restrictions. I think we really want to look at what we do for the next year and take some time to do it, but we need to do that on a quicker way. And I think Liz spoke about this. And then there's a longer term issue of what we want to do that both Liz spoke to and Lee and some others spoke to. That's going to take more time because we need a lot of input if we're going to do anything that's a permanent change in Palm Canyon. And as we're going through our general plan update for the next 20 years, I think that conversation is really part of what we need to do there. So Dennis, do you have anything else you want to add or share? And then...
Certainly, I think very good issues were brought up. One is to bring in more retail and try and reach out to them a little stronger, which I think we did pretty strongly for this meeting to reach out to them to participate. The parking garage the underground parking that we currently have, I hear all your comments on that. I think as Michael Braun said, we have a good jump on that. We'll be bringing something back to you as soon as we can finalize some numbers on that. That's just one piece of the puzzle though. But the bigger piece I want to go back to is, do we allow parklets into the public right of way? Is it just the sidewalk? Is it the street, which I didn't hear a whole lot of discussion on? Is it private parking lots? Is it kind of the status quo of what we're currently doing? How do we deal with equity? Some of those issues that weren't brought up today, we still have to deal with at a council level, and we'd like your input on. So please feel free to email me if you have any other additional comments on that. And I really do like everyone's idea of a two-part to this, what's going to be the immediate need for the next year and what's our long-term solution. And I just want to say, get involved in the general plan update. We are doing more extensive outreach on that. Something like a change or a European style street is a chunk of change, and that needs to be a capital improvement project that needs to be voted on by the entire council and needs to be funded. So I would ask everyone, if that's really your intent, to have somebody is to get involved way up front, because it takes some planning. And as I think Lee had said, we want to do it right and not do it wrong. And there are examples out there of ways to do it right, and there are examples of ways to do it wrong. And we don't want to jump on something like we did earlier in the year that didn't work out for everybody. And with that, I just really, really appreciate everyone's input, and I really appreciate everyone's ability to have been adaptable in the last year and have built parklets. I think it is a beginning to show of a new way to look at our street. Palm Canyon is 3 lanes wide. I don't know, plus parking on each side. I don't know if all of that is necessarily needed for traffic, but we also have parades and gay prides and other things to consider when we look at the right of way. And that's why I think looking at it through the general plan update will be an important factor in this. So I really thank everyone for your participation.
Great, thanks. And so for Jay and Flynn, obviously you've gotten a lot of input and we'll get more, I'm sure, by email. Is there other stuff that you need from comments from people who are on this or from Councilmember Woods or myself?
We appreciate everyone who's offered their comments. As the council members have indicated, we have this coming up tentatively on the June 10th City Council agenda, where we'll be looking for input from the City Council in terms of direction. What we will do is include the different points that you all brought up in terms of issues that need to be addressed as we look at extending this program. And so we'll try and include that in our staff report. If you have any additional comments you wish to make, you can either email me or Jay Verada so that we can include those comments in the backup materials for the City Council discussion.
Great, thank you. So we had 2 other items on the agenda, both of which will take more than 14 or 13 minutes. So absent objection, I think we will continue those to our next meeting. This was obviously the one that's most time sensitive because as state orders go away, that's the only way currently we're allowed to allow the parklets the way we are. And we really wanted to make sure we gave everyone time to share and really appreciate everyone's input. So we will, we're now going to be doing these monthly. So we'll get the next one scheduled, which really is talk about outdoor merchandise, which has been shared. Some people already shared on that, as well as just more creativity and options in A-frames than what's currently allowed. And if we have updates on sort of the wayfinding and the parking signage that is being considered, it would be great for all of us to see that. And maybe we can add that to the next meeting as well. So with that, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone. Please enjoy your dinners and drinks in lovely parklets tonight, or on people's patios who don't have parklets, or inside. And have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you for this meeting.
Hang in there, Jay. Did a good job.
I think I figured out how to make a co-sponsor.
Yeah, well, next time.
It's tough to present and try and let people in. I had the same
It's
problem
horrid.
yesterday.
And it's
people are
horrid.
waiting and texting me, but you know, you don't see it. So, so thanks, Jay, for trying to manage both.
Right,
See you later.
Thanks, David, for helping.
Of course, Jay.